Foul. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Let's
What's up, everyone? Welcome to a special live edition of DodgerHeads presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Matthew Moreno, here to celebrate something, Matt, we've become accustomed to. The Dodgers have the best record in baseball. That was actually clinched prior to the 13-2 victory that just wrapped up, but a huge accomplishment for the Dodgers amidst what has been a bizarre, crazy, off the rails at times season, it feels like.
Yeah, last year, I know this isn't going to be a popular take. There was, I think, a sentiment amongst the majority of our staff, if not everybody, that it was Dave Roberts' best managerial season, considering, the roster and what the Dodgers did at the trade deadline, again, referencing last season. Now this year, best record in baseball once again, which they didn't get last season. Yeah. Home field advantage through the World Series. We're going to kind of dive into kind of all the specifics and, wild card outlook right now. But yeah, all the injuries the Dodgers have had this season, I think you could make the case that this is the best job that Dave Roberts has done in his managerial career now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the best record in baseball, didn't get it last year. This is the 4th time in the last 5 years, however, that they've had the best record in baseball. 2023, they had the 3rd best record. 2019, they were 1 game back. So basically, in a 6-year stretch, they've been best record, 3rd best record, best, 2nd best by a game. Talk about an insane stretch of baseball.
Yeah, and even within that, they didn't get it in 2021 despite winning, 106 games, right? And it was because the Giants had their crazy season. I remember us talking and doing our shows, and I kept saying, like the Giants will eventually, like they're not going to play 700 ball the rest of the way, and somehow they kept doing it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's a remarkable stretch, and I know, now isn't the time to really get into it, but a lot of frustration does stem from, all these trips to the playoffs and only 1 World Series, and I get it, but it is still worth giving credit to the Dodgers organization, front office, Dave Roberts, the players, giving them their due for this, 12 consecutive trips to the playoffs. You bring it up all the time that there was a period where, making like a wild card game maybe was like, oh my gosh, This team is so good. And now here we are, getting spoiled, certainly.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because you're right. It's 3 of the last 5 years that they have had the best record in baseball. 2 of the 6, if you go back 6 years, were by 1 game. They won 106 games in 21 and 19 and did not have the best record in baseball in either of those seasons. So an unbelievable stretch. And I do want to pick up on something you said about Dave Roberts in just a second, but let's get to a couple super chats here. Dodgers have beaten the ever-loving snot out of the Rockies the past 2 games. Yes, in fact, they have. The stats they put up, it was like in 18 innings, they had 33 hits or something against the Rockies. It's not just Ohtani that's heating up. Gavin Lux looked good tonight. Will Smith looked good tonight. Taylor had a hit. Kike 3 hits. Muncy. I mean, there's some things happening. It's the Rockies. I get it. It's the Rockies in Coors Field. But yes, they have been destroying a team that they should be destroying.
Yeah, and Friday's game, I think, was more impressive just because they're coming off the clincher, celebrating, arrived in Denver late, and they still, we discussed it. The way the roster rules are, like, you're not going to get lineups anymore, of a bunch of rookies, because you just don't have that flexibility. And the Dodgers are shorthanded. Freddie Freeman and Miguel Rojas aren't even out there this weekend.
Yeah.
So
Kiermaier leaves early.
Yeah, Kiermaier now is unfortunately going to be off the playoff roster, possibly with a finger injury. But yeah, like I told you guys, I think the Dodgers are certainly trending in the right direction of winning a series in October this year.
Yeah, we're going to leave that one alone for now. Christopher has a fair question. Kasperius yesterday, Robleski today. If you had to pick one of those guys for the postseason, Matt, Kasperius goes 2 1/3. I believe it was 2 1/3, 7, or was it 4 1/3? I forget. He had 4 1/3. Yeah. 4 1/3, 7 strikeouts, 8 base runners for Kasperius yesterday. Robleski, the 4-inning save today, 2 hits. I believe 2 hits, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks for Robleski. It feels like of late, Kasperius has been the guy that has been the first one available. Do you think Kasperius is sort of has a leg up, if you will, in between these two as far as the postseason roster pecking order?
Definitely when compared to Robleski, but if you are asking me just in general about Kasperius' odds of being on the NLDS roster, I'm not fully sold that they're particularly high right now.
Yeah, like would you take a guy like Honeywell and his beautiful permed hair that was shown about 18 times on the broadcast today, which rightfully so, by the way. But do you think Honeywell would be ahead of Robleski or excuse me, Kasperius?
That's a toss up. I think that could boil down to who the Dodgers are playing in the NLDS and maybe if one profiles better against the opponent than the other.
Yeah.
I think it's more of just the veteran presence and the grit that the likes of Daniel Hudson and Joe Kelly have that are going to be an obstacle for Kasperius.
Yeah, and I think your point, obviously Robleski's a lefty, Kasperius a righty. So if you're facing a team that has a little bit more trouble against left-handed pitching, then maybe it's a guy like Robleski.
Honestly, even then, I'm not sure though. I think he with Banda back and Vesia, like I don't know if they would feel a need like Robleski. I mean, again, and I'm just now I've been traumatized by the exercise, the blind resume test you and I did, and Robleski's name not quite matching his stats and production this season. And look, it's nothing about his development and his potential that I think is certainly still there. It's just this year, right now, I don't know if they would want to go with Robleski and kind of some of the risks that come with him.
Yeah, and I didn't get a chance to watch yesterday's game all that closely. Full disclosure, I saw all the positivity around Kasperius's line, and I was surprised when I went and looked. It was 4 1/3. It was 7 strikeouts, yes, but it was 6 hits allowed and 2 walks. I mean, 8 base runners in 4 1/3. I'm reading my text messages expecting to see like 4 1/3, 2 hits, 7 strikeouts. He also allowed 2 runs, one of them earned. So you were more dialed in yesterday. Like, is there something I was missing there?
I think it's more Kasperius was showing off like, hey, like traffic can get on the bases and I'm still going to minimize damage. Like I'm ready for October in that sense.
Got it. Perfect. He was doing a great job of just putting guys on base just to prove he could get out of it. Fair. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I do think the bullpen, though, is kind of the last remaining question. I think there's 5 or 6 guys who are pretty much locks. The announcement that Landon Knack is going to be in the postseason rotation, that Gonsolin will not be on the postseason roster. I think the news that Pages is all but guaranteed to be on the postseason roster, that kind of answers all of the remaining questions. You could add Kiermaier's finger, probably solidifies the last piece of this. I was told he was a lock for the postseason roster. Maybe it's just the injury that's going to be the only reason that keeps him off. But it does feel like the bullpen, Matt, is the last remaining. How do they handle those last couple of spots?
Yeah, and that's what Anthony and I know I'm seeing a lot of our usual followers, watchers, listeners, all the above. So thank you everybody who's joined us. But a lot of them were in here with us, Anthony and I, on Friday night. And that's what we discussed is I have a feeling that at this point, when Dave Roberts does start doing media availability early next week, it's going to be like, yes, our roster is pretty much set. We're deciding on maybe a final relief pitcher or two. And like I said a few minutes ago, some of that might stem from whoever the Dodgers could potentially play. Obviously, they have the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
The Padres are locked into the top wild card seed. So that's one, but they know half of the scenarios for them. So that helps. And now we just have to see, the rest of the puzzle. And the Dodgers probably won't make their decision until that has fallen into place.
I want to circle back as we're talking about the Dodgers' best record in baseball. You mentioned something about Dave Roberts and how this is a testament to him and his ability as a manager. Obviously, we all know about the rotation issues that this team has faced. We know the injuries that this team has faced even outside of the rotation. In the bullpen, offensively, Freddie Freeman being gone for a number of different reasons at various points this season. Will Smith having struggles, the Gavin Lux scenario. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces that have been in and around Dave Roberts and the Dodgers this season. And yes, I know that the record that the Dodgers are going to finish with this season is not going to be triple digits. It's not going to be quite as good as previous years, although they could get to 98, which is pretty dang impressive. Talk to me about like the Dave Roberts piece, because I think you're on to something. As much negativity as there has been about this team, the fact that they're going to win 97 or 98 games and have the best record in baseball by a couple games at least is I don't know what word other than really freaking impressive to use.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I've never, I think, hidden or tried to downplay the Dave Roberts' ability to manage the clubhouse and egos and players and playing time and all the different challenges that come with that. The Dodgers, I don't want to say they do things in a unique fashion, but sort of like they're one of the more, I think, maybe headstrong, sort of aggressive, like set in their ways type of team that this is what has worked for us. This is how we like to operate. And Dave gets players to buy in. I like Kike, I'm sure would love to be starting every day.
Yeah.
Right. Like every player wants to play all the time, but he understands that that's not the role for him. And from the Dodgers standpoint, they believe that he's best suited for a platoon role. And they have kind of sold him on that. And now look, here we are. October's coming up and Kike is starting to heat up again.
Yeah.
And even, I think something kind of as small as it's not really that small. I shouldn't describe it that way, but all the Mookie stuff, like, yes, I think Mookie moving to second base this season was definitely a two-way street. But then the Dodgers basically were in a bind in spring training, and not that they needed to sell him on shortstop. I think Mookie was a willing participant and wanted to make that change if it was going to help the team.
Yeah.
But then when he fractured his hand, moving Ohtani into the leadoff spot and telling Mookie, hey, when you come back, we're actually going to have you hitting second, and we're actually going to move you to right field, after Dave had told us multiple times that, yes, the plan is for Mookie to come back at second base. Or at shortstop, excuse me. He's looking forward to that, this and that. And then there was a change. Like that's like Mookie's a perennial all-star, right? Like that stuff's not easy. And even I think introducing a big, I don't want to say personality, but a superstar, global superstar in Ohtani, and blending him with the clubhouse and stuff like that. And look, maybe we'll look back one day and the whole Ipe fiasco is going to be a blessing in disguise, because it did seem like there were a lot of not rumblings, but comments from Dave Roberts. And I think some players of that, yes, Ohtani became more integrated with the clubhouse than he was before that. But I think Dave deserves a lot of credit. And I know that at the end of the day, it's a results driven business, and the regular season and playoffs get sort of separated in that sense. And I get it. And look, if the Dodgers flame out, if they really struggle in the NLDS and are eliminated, I will be the same person sitting here like I did last year and saying, hey, like we might need to reevaluate things and see if there should be a change.
Yeah. I would add the Walker Buehler struggles and sort of his place in the clubhouse as well. Obviously managing the Gavin Lux situation the way that they did, giving him the time and the runway. How much of that was because of the performance of a bunch of guys around him. But again, I think kudos to Dave Roberts. I saw somebody in the chat. I mean, do you think Dave Roberts is he'll be in the running for National League Manager of the Year for sure. But as somebody who follows this team particularly closely, I would be hard pressed to find a team that had worse injury luck and the same amount of success. Because, I mean, you talk about the Braves, awful injury luck, no doubt about it. They might not make the playoffs. I mean, now I know if they win tomorrow, they're going to make the playoffs. But, like, that would almost be the expectation for a team like the Dodgers. If I told you, hey, like, 9 of your top 14 pitchers are going to be hurt, and then you're going to get the best record in the baseball. Like, how is that guy not the favorite for National League Manager of the Year?
Yeah, I agree. I thought last year, again, like last year to me, it's Dave has exceeded it, but last year I thought was his best job. And we had an article ready for him winning Manager of the Year, because I thought he would be recognized for, the Dodgers had injuries last season as well. Not necessarily to this extent, but the significant amount, and the trade deadline was much more of a dud than what we saw this year. But seeing how that went, I think the name escapes me right now. I feel like the Brewers manager will probably end up winning it because they clinched their division. Wasn't expected, but Pat Murphy. Yes, thank you. My expectation is hopefully Dave Roberts and I know that he doesn't necessarily care, but at the very least, not that it gets him anything, but is a final, like a top 3, finish type thing, because he wasn't last year, and that's like there's no way in my opinion, but hey, maybe it's just the patented West Coast bias coming out of me that I know us over on covering the Dodgers and other teams out here have been accused of recently.
Yeah, and kudos to Pat Murphy and the Brewers, by the way. That's a team we all expected to be sellers. Like, it was like, Willie Adames, he'll be available. Give it a month. And they are going to finish. They're a game back of the Phillies right now. So kudos to him. And again, I think I'm not going to be mad if Pat Murphy of the Brewers wins. To your point, I just hope that Dave Roberts gets recognized, because I think he gets crapped on a lot. And I'm not saying some of that crapping on isn't justified, but I think if we're going to be fair when he screws up, we've got to be fair when he does a great job. And oftentimes you don't notice when a manager does good things, because in small sample sizes, it's like you don't notice, right? It's the wrong pitching decision or the wrong pinch hitting decision or not bunting with runners at first and second, and Dave Roberts gets crushed. What we don't often appreciate is looking back and saying, holy crap, he kept this team together. They might win 97 games. Kudos to Dave Roberts in that one. So we'll see where he stands come award season. Shout out real quick, by the way, to Nomo FOMO. Says, I ran the Dodgers Foundation 5K today at Dodger Stadium, so I didn't watch the game. How did Yamamoto look? Well, first I want to know what the 5K time was. Nothing personal, but I was a high school cross country runner myself, Matt. So I got a couple 5K times under my belt. But the answer to the Yamamoto question, I would say I was pretty impressed with how Yamamoto looked. Again, you're not looking for anything spectacular. It's not like I was expecting 7 innings of shutout ball. He gives up 2 runs, gives up the 1 home run. I believe that's where both of those runs scored, if I'm not mistaken. 5 hits, no walks, 6 strikeouts. That's exactly what I wanted to see. In Coors Field, great. I feel good about it. Can we get that up to 5 innings in the postseason? I think so, but I feel good about Yamamoto. I said the other day, I feel better about him than any other starting pitcher on the Dodgers staff right now. Maybe not lengthwise, but what I'm going to get when he's on the mound, 4 innings, 5 innings, I think he's the best guy the Dodgers have.
More than you're more confident in Yamamoto than our guy Bueller. I thought you and I were riding shotgun on the butane bus.
Yeah, butane game 3. We're feeling good about butane. We're feeling better. My butane stance is I feel better about him today than I did a month ago. I mean, like, where are you on butane? Like, are we ready to check in on Blake's Bueller is cooked? Like, are we ready to push back on that? Or are we like, are we like slow playing that one a little bit? I need an NLDS start before I push back.
No, I told Anthony last night, maybe it was a little tongue in cheek, but he said something to the effect of he wasn't going to put all his eggs in the Bueller basket. And I said, hey, that's you. I've already put mine in there. Like I was all in. I know I led him to informing our lovely audience of the one individual who predicted Dylan Cease would lose and then Walker Bueller would rise to the occasion. I know you got the same message from said person. But no, I mean, look, do I think Bueller's going to go out in the playoffs and throw 7 innings? And same thing with Yamamoto, not to fully detract from, the question we got asked. No, but yes, I think certainly Yamamoto, I agree with you. I am most confident in what Yamamoto can provide them. In terms of his start tonight, the biggest thing was 1, he got through it healthy. And 2, that he did get to 5 innings, because I did tell Anthony that is one thing, because he hadn't really been able to stretch out. He struggled against the Rockies in the start at home. To see him get through 5 innings tonight was sort of the goal that I kind of set for him. So to do that, I think, it was great. And I know we'll kind of get into it. His next start looks to be somewhat shockingly in game 2 instead of game 1.
Yeah, talk to me about that. So I know they've kind of announced names. I got the sense that maybe they haven't announced order. Has there been something I missed where they hinted that it's going to be Flaherty 1, Yamamoto 2?
Yeah, so in Dave Roberts fashion, the 4 starters that were going to make up the rotation were revealed on Friday. Okay. He did add the caveat that Landon Knack could follow an opener, so maybe he's not an actual starter, but for all intents and purposes, he's in the rotation. Then before tonight's game on Saturday, Dave, acknowledged that, Jack Flaherty in game 1 is probably the likely scenario, which I think it makes sense from a standpoint of, and I know I've kind of joked with you guys, like Landon Knack might get the Ryan Pepio treatment where, he's the game 4 starter until he's not type thing. Obviously the Dodgers hope to just avoid being in a limit.
There's no Lance Lynn hanging around this year. That's the good news. If it until he's not, does not involve Lance Lynn starting that game. Sure. So that's the good news.
Yeah. So I think Flaherty starting game 1 opens up the possibility of, going to him on short rest if you need it. My advice to the Dodgers would just be to sweep the NLDS so that you don't have to worry about any of this, but we'll see if they take it.
Yeah, I did. When I saw that, I was like, man, imagine the Dodgers being down 2-1 and Landon Knack taking the ball in game 4. It's just like, well, that's the post-game show will be electric that night, one way or the other. Let's get to a couple of these super chats. Robert says, what's your biggest concern for the postseason right now, Matt?
That's a good question.
I'll take one that I think is probably obvious once I say it out loud. It's Freddie Freeman's ankle is absolutely the biggest concern for the postseason for me. And I know that's sort of a cop-out because the question is more asking probably like, is it starting pitching? Is it the bullpen? Right. If Freddie Freeman isn't a go, I've said all along this team is built to win offensively. And if you take Freddie Freeman out, I think that's going to be a massive, massive hole right in the middle of the lineup. So my biggest concern is they're saying no structural damage. They're saying, I don't know, hopeful, I'm sure is a word that was used at some point. To me, it's got to be Freddie Freeman.
That's fair. I was torn between, we just got done sort of raving about starting pitching, but still, like, a lot of things still sort of need to go right with those guys. So I was going to say starting pitching or health, and the health factor. Miguel Rojas is hurt too, but yes, Freddie Freeman is certainly the bigger impact there. And just because, it's easier to have Tommy Edman play shortstop, and now, the way Pages has been recently, like, if he needed to start, and he's even looked better defensively in center field. Like, he made a couple catches against the Padres that, a month ago, I'm not sure if he comes up with. But yeah, I'll stick with kind of the where this question was probably leading to, and say starting pitching.
I love people in the chat saying I'm putting bad vibes in the air. What bad vibes? Did you see the picture of his ankle? Like, I'm the optimistic one. I get called the homer, and now I just point out that your foot's not supposed to bend that way, Matt, and the people don't like it. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here.
Yeah, I mean, look, in reality, Freddie Freeman will be in the lineup for Game 1. How much swelling and pain is in that ankle? I'm not comfortable with, and we're not going to know. Like, he's going to say he's fine, he's playing this and that, but yes, that was a nasty. I've sprained my ankles playing basketball. That was a nasty roll.
I did see somebody in the chat, I believe it was Matty Man, who said that he actually thinks Dodgers starting pitching is in a better spot this year than it was last year, which I suppose involves the fact that Lance Lynn pitched in a playoff game for the Dodgers. I'd have to go back and sort of recall exactly where I felt like I was, but I'm surprised that I'm not even like, that might be correct. And it surprises me that might be true.
I think it is because the floor is higher.
Okay.
Remember last year, Kershaw had gotten to the point where he could kind of will himself through 5 innings.
He literally needed shoulder surgery as soon as the postseason ended.
Yeah, and then he ended up needing shoulder surgery. Bobby Miller, I didn't expect him to struggle the way he did in that sense. And then, yes, like Lance Lynn, although, look, people keep bagging on Lance Lynn, and I love to remind everybody, he made postseason history. He made postseason history with the Dodgers, so leave it at that. But yeah, I do agree. I think the pitching at right now, and much of that, like Anthony and I discussed, is a testament and a credit to Walker Buehler, because if he had not kind of emerged, the rotation would be very shaky, because then all of a sudden, like, Landon Knack is probably a Game 3 starter.
Yeah.
And then what? Like, it's kind of a grab bag behind him.
Yeah, it's a fair point. All right, let's get to some other ones. Tim says home field throughout clinched. If Ohtani gets one more extra base hit, he reaches 100. Only 15 of those in MLB history. Incredible, historic year, regardless. Absolutely. I do want to, I'll use Tim's comment here, which we appreciate, Tim. Luis Arias sitting today for the lovely Padres while holding the batting title temporarily, at least. Any thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, Anthony and I got into this last night, kind of about the possibility, and it's chicken blank. I'll let the listeners fill that in. I don't like it. I think, if you have, like, if somebody's trying to chase you down, like, go out and play. And I understand the Padres don't have anything to play for. Like, Friday night, they wrapped everything up, and these final 2 games for them don't mean anything. But on a personal, like, at least start and get 2 at bats, and then come out early. Again, like, this isn't 40-man active rosters in September, so it's not like it's easy for the Padres to just sit everybody. So it kind of comes across as, they're trying to skate by. And I know he said he'll be in the lineup on Sunday, but at this point I think Arias would have to go like 0 for 3 or 4, and Ohtani would have to have like a 5-hit day or something like that. So for all intents and purposes, I think the batting title.
Yeah, how convenient for him to come back tomorrow once it's basically guaranteed to have been locked up already. It's classic. I mean, look, this is just the Padres, man. This is just the Padres.
Well, remember a few years ago, Jeff McNeil did this to Freddie Freeman. He sat the last day of the season so that he would end up being the batting champion instead of Freeman.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. Stuff. Robert says, will this team lose momentum if starting pitching gives up runs early? Obviously, that's not what we're hoping for. I mean, here's the good news. You've got a veteran team. This isn't a team that's going to like fold if they're down 2 or 3-0 after 2 or 3 innings. And it's a team that knows they can score. And probably, I don't think there's a single pitcher in the league that Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani look across and they're like, oh man, Chris Sale on the mound today. Like, we are screwed. Like, there's nobody. And so I just don't think it's not going to be great. Like, I'm expecting the Dodgers to be down in the first 5 innings in most of these games. But I just also expect that the Dodgers offense will eventually wear people out, and they're not going to feel sorry for themselves down a couple runs early on.
Yeah, I think honestly, the equalizer to this is Ohtani.
Yeah.
He's leading off the bottom of the first inning, and either he hits a home run or he's getting on base. And even if it's a single, there's 100% chance basically with his success rate the past couple months that he's going to be in scoring position. So, yes, that would prove a little bit of an uphill battle that you don't want the Dodgers to face. But I think that they're equipped to overcome a deficit so long as it's not like 5-0 right away.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, tonight's going to be a short show, by the way. So we've got 5 or 10 more minutes in here. I just want to warn people. I threw out something on social media, Matt, that I wasn't entirely positive how this was going to be received. Can Shohei Ohtani stop stealing bases, please? Like, I get it. I get the numbers. You're going for 60. He had one. It got called back for a buck. Kiermaier literally busted his finger. And it's Kiermaier. So, like, kind of sorry. Bummer for him. Like, I don't know where you're at on this. I don't need him straining his hamstring in any way, shape, or form. I don't need him sliding into any bases. Like, you have 57, 58, wherever he's at. Like, stop. Please stop.
I think tomorrow for the last game of the season, you basically shut him down. And I would honestly, look, it doesn't seem like he's going to win the batting title, and every team starts at the same time tomorrow. So if the Dodgers see that mathematically it's pretty much wrapped up for Luis Arraez, I would go to Shohei and say, hey, like, we'll give you a second at bat, but then we're pulling you out at that point. I had the same thought. Teoscar Hernandez stole second base on Friday night and got up like a little slow. And I thought, man, like, what are you doing? Like, and the Dodgers already had a little bit of a comfort. It wasn't the huge lead that they ended up with, but it was comfortable enough that I didn't think he needed to be doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and look, people are saying they'd like to see
55 home runs. Like, I'm fine. Let him swing every at bat. Like, I'm good with that. It's just like the steals number is irrelevant to me at this point. And the injury risk when you are stealing a base, like, think about all of the things, the baseball coming in, who knows where it hits you, right? Like the fielder, if he's in the right position, if you have to slide, like, does your foot slip out when you're trying? There's so many things that could go wrong in a stolen base that the upside is basically zero and the downside is not zero. That's all I'm saying. So,
yeah, and I think for the last day of the regular season, that's a fair point. I think tonight, if they told him, hey, like, this is kind of the last time, like, go for it, we're gonna kind of rein you in a little bit, then fine.
Yeah. And again, I see some people, he's chasing the Triple Crown. It sounds like mathematically, basically no chance that he can get to batting average after Arraez sat today. And I believe Ohtani finished, was it 2 for 5, I think is where he ended up finishing today. 2 for 5. So those two things combined, he's like 3 points behind with 1 game to go, which is, very, very, very unlikely. Again, swing away, 55. Sure, you could talk me into that. I think the risk being at bat is not incredibly high. Although, look, if you're a Dodgers fan, man, Hanley Ramirez, like, how many names do you want me to mention here? Was it Mookie? Was it Mookie that took right? Yeah, he broke his wrist earlier this season. I mean, whatever. I'm not going to speak this stuff into existence, but put a lot of padding on, swing for the fences, take your base, and then just sit there. So that's all I got. All right. Let's get to a couple questions here. If you've got those, throw those in the chat. We'll try and get to a few of them. Why is Jeff acting like Arraez? Nobody's chasing Ohtani in any of these categories. Like, there's nobody chasing him. So, whatever. Aaron says, I just want Shohei's home run plus stolen base total to be higher than Acuna's. I don't need, I know Acuna. What's that number at? Do we know?
It's probably 100. He got 70 stolen bases, right? Or 71.
Let's see. Somebody
or 60. What did he end? Excuse me, I forgot what he ended up at. And then 40 home runs?
73 and 41. So 114. Yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah, unfortunately, look, I thought 60-60 was in the cards for Ohtani, but he needed to get to Coors with at least 55 home runs. And then I thought he could, put on a laser show and end up with 5 in the final 3 games, but unfortunately not seeing it now.
Cole says, do the Dodgers put Kiermaier on the IL and call up Rushing or Outman? If you missed it, I mean, oh my gosh, if you want to talk about regretful decisions, Kiermaier, base knock, RBI, like to the left fielder. We're not even talking about a gap ball. Like slowly hit to the left fielder. Left fielder slow plays it a little bit. Kiermaier just like, you know what, I'm going to try and take second. Smashes his finger into the bag. Basically, who knows, dislocated, broken, whatever he did, immediately out of the game. I think Kiermaier, once it was announced that Pages was going to be on the playoff roster, Dave basically said, I don't see a scenario where he's not. Then it was like, okay, there's no way they're going to take Kiermaier over Chris Taylor. Like that was kind of the only two guys left. So I think from a playoff roster perspective, this has zero impact. I would hate if Kiermaier does in fact retire and this is the last thing that happens to him. That would be brutal. But as far as tomorrow, I mean, do we know? I'm sure they have somebody on. Is Outman on the taxi squad? Like, I'm assuming they have some of these guys with the team because the AAA season is over with. Do we know who's on a taxi squad, Matt?
I haven't seen anything. I don't know if they necessarily had anybody with them, somewhat surprisingly. But it wouldn't shock me because now, if Kiermaier is unavailable, the Dodgers are without 3 position players because, again, like I mentioned, Freeman and Rojas didn't travel. Yeah. So my guess is they probably would put him on for the sheer fact of needing a body. I think maybe it could end up being, Outman put together a really strong close to the season with Oklahoma City. So on one hand, maybe you want to reward him for that.
He's also the only position player other than catchers on the 40-man roster. So, that's another piece to just include and factor in.
Is Rushing? I forget. Rushing
is not on the 40-man roster.
So I mean, I guess I don't know. I was going to say it could be a cool story to, call him up on the final day of the season, let him start. Dodgers do have a 60-day IL candidate, Kershaw, but I don't know if they'll do that right now.
They have a bunch of 60-day IL candidates. Gavin Stone as well, right?
No, I thought or is he only on the 15-day right now? I thought I couldn't remember if they transferred him.
Oh, maybe you're right. Yeah, you're right. Stone's already on the 60-day. So it's Kershaw, Honeywell, and Gratterall are all 15-day IL guys right now.
Well, Gratterall's week to week, so he's not going on the 60-day because he'll be back if the Dodgers advance.
He'll be back. Perfect.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess if you boil it down, it's probably just from a logistics standpoint, it probably will be Outman, and he plays center. He plays center, which Pages could, but you have enough corner outfielders that you would probably want somebody who has more experience in center field.
And for what it's worth, I believe I'm like 85 to 90% sure Dalton Rushing does not need to be added to the 40-man roster at any point this offseason. He is not Rule 5 eligible. So I'm not saying they won't, but it's not like one of these situations where it's like, well, you're going to have to add this guy to the 40-man in 2 months. So why not just do it now? I believe he's a 2025 guy.
Fabian Ardaya just tweeted a minute ago, Kevin Kiermaier dislocated his left ring finger, got it popped back in. He's day-to-day, Dave Roberts said. So sounds like you'll be fine. You'll be back in the lineup tomorrow.
Day-to-day. Dave Roberts, hopeful that he'll be back tomorrow.
Tape it up and get back in the lineup. Final day of the season. We need you.
Yeah. Aaron says, can we talk about Honeywell's hair? It's fantastic. I love the tidbit that I believe Kirsten Watson got, that he's got like an aunt who's a hairdresser who came in and did it for him. So look, it's fantastic. They talked about it like 15 times, and I would have been fine with the 16th time. The turtleneck, the gold chain, the Kenny Powers permed mullet. Look, I'm here for the vibe. Do you know? I mean, like, has anybody ever asked him about the turtleneck? I've had people in my life that have asked me, like, what the heck is this guy's deal with the shirt that he wears under his jersey? Is there a story that we know of, Matt?
Not that I know of. I don't know if maybe it's been shared at some point and I just haven't seen it. Yeah, maybe it's just one of those things that, hey, you just let him be. You don't ask about it.
Yeah, there you go. And by the way, I was talking about Honeywell earlier. He's on the 15-day IL, so ignore everything that I said about him being in contention, because he will not be eligible. Right? I'm doing the math. I suppose with the week off, like
he'd be more NLCS.
Okay. Rude Street Collectibles. Did the Dodgers not do team costumes this year?
So they haven't yet. It's usually on their final road trip flight. I wonder if maybe like the clinching the NL West sort of threw a wrench and everything. My guess though is maybe they'll just do it Sunday flying back home.
Okay.
Or hey, maybe they'll wait for Game 3 of the NLDS as their travel day in the playoffs. They'll do costume day.
There you go.
That'll have everybody excited about how focused they are, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Let's go out on this. I see a couple people asking about Ty Wen says, which reliever gets left off the playoff postseason roster? Excuse me. I'll read you the guys who are on the 40-man roster: Bonda, Brazier, Kasperius. Let's see, Grove in the minors, Enriquez, Hudson, Joe Kelly, Kopech, Logue. I don't know. Is that how you pronounce his name? Sorry, I'm not going to probably learn that one. Evan Phillips, Trinan, Vesia, Robleski are the guys that are in contention on the 40-man roster. When you look at kind of the group as it is, Kopech, Phillips, Brazier, Vesia, Trinan, those 5 feel like locks. Then you've got Bonda and Hudson kind of in that next group. That would be 7. So technically you could take 9 if you're only taking 4 starting pitchers. So that would mean 2 more spots left after those 7. So again, that's Kopech, Phillips, Trinan, Brazier, Vesia, Bonda, Hudson. And then you've got Kelly, you've got Enriquez, and then you've got Kasperius, Robleski types. So is it Joe Kelly and Edgardo Enriquez, and that's as simple as it needs to be in your estimation, Matt?
So I think that's what it'll end up being. I think maybe Kasperius is in the conversation instead of Enriquez. I think Joe Kelly's on. I think Daniel Hudson's probably on, unless there is some sort of injury issue. But I also feel like if there was, he's been struggling for a few weeks now, that they would have just put him on the 15-day IL and then brought him back at some point. I mean, I was honestly surprised that they only gave him like the few days off instead of just putting him on the IL at the time, because you could have done that and then given him a longer period of time to rest, recover, and come back. But yeah, I mean, I could see it being Kelly and Enriquez. I think Kasperius is in the conversation though.
Yeah, and I think it's, to the point that you made earlier, who are you facing and what are maybe their strengths or weaknesses? If it's a team that struggles against lefties, again, I know they've already got a couple lefties in Vesia and Bonda, but I could see a world where you look at Robleski, because what is it? I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. I think the Padres just demolish right-handed pitching. And so if you're facing the Padres, then maybe it's a guy like Robleski who's a little bit more appealing to you if him and Kasperius are neck and neck. Enriquez is a great story, throws really, really hard. He gave up a run in his last outing. So, I think those 3 guys, it's probably similar conversations being had about all of them, especially given the Dodgers starting pitching. Like Enriquez is better if you said I need 3 outs from one of those guys, Edgardo Enriquez every time. But with the rotation the Dodgers are going to be throwing out there, Matt, there's no guarantee that you don't need a bulk guy somewhere along the way in the first 3 or 4 games.
Yeah, and that's obviously that pushes it towards Kasperius's favor more so than some of the other guys. Although Joe Kelly is somebody who could go 2 innings. Vesia can go 1+ if he needs to. Gratterall was actually, Dave Roberts specifically mentioned him as a reliever that they were going to look at getting multiple innings out of, but of course he's now injured, so that sort of changes things. But yeah, I understand a lot of the interest in playoff roster and stuff like that. We'll get into that stuff, next week, a little bit more detailed, and get some predictions down from our guys. We'll do, video with maybe 3 or 4 of us if it works out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, everybody, we appreciate you hopping in with us for a quick little post-game show, surprise post-game show on a Saturday night. You guys have been great. Again, the Dodgers' best record in Major League Baseball. That's worthy of celebrating. That's worthy of a special edition Saturday night live show. So thank you to every person that joined us. That is Matthew Moreno. I am Jeff Spiegel. If you haven't already, subscribe, ring the notification bell. Tons and tons of postseason content coming your way in the next month and a half, Matt, of Dodgers postseason baseball that we've got coming. So prepare yourself for that. Check out DodgerBlue.com, DodgerBlue1958 on social media. And if you're a podcast person, Apple, Spotify, Google, find the DodgerHeads podcast. That is Matt. I am Jeff. Enjoy the rest of your night, everyone. And as always, go Dodgers.